This should be working. You can hear me? Perfect. Actually, I am from the Mineral License and Safety Authority. The old BMP changed its name in 2014, but that doesn't really make that much of a difference anymore. So I have promised to make a short presentation about the mineral resources strategy, as well as a brief introduction to the mineral resources area seen from the government side here in Greenland. So my plan is to talk a bit about the organization, then about the strategy in place and the new one that we are in the process of preparing, then status about minerals, presentation of the more advanced projects here in Greenland, and then a bit of the status of, so to say. So we work together to ensure that everything go out to the right people and so on, and it's actually my agency that put everything up on the physical hearing portal. So it's more, we do all of this together, but it's just to understand that everything is sort of divided, but we do make joint recommendations that are placed through the government who make the final decisions in the end. The current strategy that is in place right now is from 2014, or it was implemented in the beginning of 2014, and it's, to be honest, it's quite optimistic, especially if you look at how the world is right now. It was written throughout 2013. It has long-term goals of 5 to 10 active mines. On the hydrocarbon side, the goal was to have 2 drillings over a 10-year period. It was even that optimistic that after this period we would have drillings every 2nd year. We have stuck to some of the things in the strategy, or actually most of the larger things. There was the introduction of royalty, and we also stick to having hydrocarbon licensing rounds. We have completed Disconusa, which is today an open door area. Then we have the Baffin Bay here in 2017 and Davis Strait next year, and we stick to those. It's very important for companies that they can plan after something, and if we change this every year, then we don't get the good reputation that we want from the companies and the public in general. And it's the same with royalty. It's been highly debated here in Greenland whether it should have been introduced or not, but it is, so we stick to it to create continuity. If we change our policies every year, then it's not going to be very good and not very trustworthy. And it was also with this strategy that the pre-consultation was introduced, and there's an 8-week public consultation as a minimum for major projects, and it was introduced in the Mineral Resources Act as well. I believe it was in the change for 2014. So these have been very important, and it's very important that we as a government follow these, that follow the current strategy in place. But 2018, that's next year, so we of course have to prepare a new strategy, and we are already working on that. And we plan to submit a draft for a public consultation next summer. And the idea is to get as many as possible engaged in this work. And my minister for the mineral resources area has already held a number of meetings with various stakeholders. He's very keen on getting people's feedback on a number of issues, and we of course try to take as many things into perspective when we prepare a new strategy. So we're already engaging some stakeholders, and we will hopefully engage even more when we get it out, so both people can have their say on this. We plan to maintain the long-term goals. Again, we cannot just change policies every other year, so we need to keep this in place. So this is how the world looks right now. I don't have the newest figures, but they are more or less comparable to this right now. The only thing that's remarkably changed is the number of small-scale licenses. It's been a very large focus area for the current government. So today we have 58 small-scale licenses. It's a very big area, and it's I believe it's a very good thing for Greenland. It makes people interested in the mineral resources area. And we have some great people out there who are very skilled and who do beautiful work. So it's very nice. We have 7 exploitation licenses. It's actual mining permits, and I will touch upon some of them in a bit. So we believe this is quite stable. It of course reflects a bit on how the world economy is going, but we actually believe this is fairly good numbers. So we hope it will continue. So these are some of the more advanced projects. I'm sure most of you have heard about them, and some of you know them quite well. We have Citronenfjord in the far north, and down south we have 2 rare earth elements projects. As you can see, the projects are spread all over Greenland, which makes some challenges sometimes, because they're quite far away, some of them. The Greenland Ruby project is, of course, the most advanced. It's an active mine, which has been of course, a very good success for the government that we have an active mine in Greenland again. They're in full production and have started to sell the rubies, and they have production facilities at Fiskeneset and here in Nuuk as well, and it's going really well. They have lots of local employment, and it's a project that everybody are very keen on. Then we have the Hudson project, located near to the international airport. It's an industry mineral, so it's not a high value mineral, but there's a lot of it, and that's why you can essentially make money on it. They have an exploitation license. They're almost completed construction, and we hope they go into production next year. So that's the plan. Then we have the Ironbark project, a major zinc resource, and actually it's a whole belt of zinc in the northern part of Greenland. So it's a very, very large resource, but it's located very high up north, which makes shipping everything out complicated. You can only ship it out maybe 2 months a year. So of course that's going to be a challenge for the company, but they have gained an exploitation license, and all their documentation have been in public consultation. Right now they're trying to get some finance so they can start construction. So we're hoping that it's gonna work well. Far south of Greenland, just outside the town of Narsaq, we have the Greenland Minerals and Energy GME project. We have very good rare earth elements deposit and uranium, which makes this a bit more controversial. They have already have a draft EIA and SIA, or the terms of reference for these have been in the pre-consultation, and they're working on the final EIA and SIS. So of course we also hope they're gonna able to complete these reports so we can submit them for public consultation and start the whole negotiating process about the exploitation license. And when I say negotiation process, most of it are not actually up for negotiation. We have more or less a model exploitation license that all companies need to follow. So it's more about how they're going to construct things and so on that we talk to them about. Most of the things are already standard, like the royalty. It's based on the mineral you're going to exploit, and there's not much negotiation about that. Then the last area, it's the hydrocarbon area. There has been very high expectations to this area, but the world oil prices are still very low, and they have been for quite a large number of years, which makes exploration in Greenland a challenge because it is very expensive. We are considered a frontier area in this. No commercial oil finds has been found yet. And the statistics don't look so well anymore as they have been. This is the latest area. As you can see, we have 7 remaining active licenses. We have 5 in the northeast offshore, and then we have 2 on Jameson Land. The other licenses in the west are all under surrender, so we're working on completing those. But that opens new opportunities. We get all the data that good companies collect, and these data are very interesting for new companies. So we're just in the process of publishing all of these data. We have some huge databases where companies can get these data. And we're of course very keen on getting these data out so we can hold the last licensing rounds. So we have the Baffin Bay here now, and then Davis Strait next year. So getting data out is keen to attracting new companies. So yeah, that was it. I hope you have some questions so we can engage in a more conversation about this. Yeah.
So thank you very much, Nadja, for a very useful overview of what's been happening in Greenland and where you think the future is. Can I invite questions from the floor? Eduardo. Okay, we need to try this. Don't spill your coffee. You just talk in the black bit.
Hello? Oh, yes. Thanks for your very interesting presentation, Nadja. I have a curiosity about royalty. Because you said royalty was being introduced recently, right?
It is already introduced.
Yes, and I would like to know what is the background and the logic. Because, for example, Norway and UK, the more mature province, they abolish royalty. Because the perception is that royalty is a regressive regime. Pretty much means that they ignore cost sensitive. So in this current environment, it pretty much does not encourage people to invest when there is more royalty, especially depends on the rate. Thank you.
That is true. You're absolutely right. And of course,
You need to bring it really close when it's not on.
sorry. And it's of course something that we consider, but changing our regulation all of the time and these things, it's also very not trustworthy. So we have decided to stick to the current regime about this. But of course, it's something that we are very aware of. But it's also politics. So, and that's not up for me to decide on. That's the government.
Yeah, I'm Biver Poppel. Thank you for your presentation, Nadja. The current oil and mineral strategy had as an introduction some very high expectations to what might be going on within the next few years. Could you tell something about the level of expectations that we might expect in the new mineral strategy?
I think we're going to stick more to long-term goals. We have also learned from the past it's very hard to say we're going to have 3 to 5 mines within 4 years. So it's about, of course, you want to attract interest from companies, but you also want to ensure that people in Greenland don't get their expectations way too high. I think it's about managing expectations and ensuring that companies are interested in investing in Greenland. So, yeah.
Thank you very much, and thanks for your presentation. My name is Hjalmar Dahl, and I am representing the Inuit Circumpolar Conference, Greenland. In your presentation, you mentioned a few things in regards to public consultation, and specifically you mentioned that there will be a summer 2018 consultations. Any timeline for that? Because we have previously experienced that some of the consultations happens during the vacation time in June, July, where people are out and have no possibility to do the work, and just to avoid that, whether you have any plans for time plans for that event. I know you are not political, but maybe you have something inside. We have had, we've been working, previously the hearing processes were 6 weeks, as I recall, and they increased to lengthen to 8 weeks. Any signal to further lengthen the hearing processes? Thank you.
Thank you for this. We are aware of July and August as the main summer vacation times. So I'm going to pass it on to ensure that we give people enough time to actually read through it and comment on it. Because we actually want people to comment on it, so it doesn't make sense to make it hard for people.
Yes, it's actually a very concrete question to one of your slides where you were talking about small-scale mining, small-scale projects, and then you had prospecting, and I'm not sure which one you were referring to. When should it be understood so that the small-scale license and prospecting are put together in one, or how? Because you were talking about some 50 something.
Yeah, no, it's for, this is, the latest one is for 2016, and the current 2017 numbers, like from yesterday, our prospecting licenses have lowered a bit, but the small-scale licenses, which is both exploitation and exploration licenses combined in one, have increased a lot.
So it's typical, very personal licenses.
Yeah,
and
it is.
I mean, people.
It's for locals in Greenland. You need to have lived here for at least 5 consecutive years. So it's only for local people who gets a small-scale license.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My second question regarding the length of the hearing processes, we've been able to manage to lengthen the hearing consultations processes from 6 to 8 weeks. Any signal politically whether they wanted to lengthen it furthermore from 8 to 10 weeks or something?
I'm sorry, it's not the. That's not our main responsibility. That's the Ministry of Industry, Labor and Trade. So, but I will pass on your comment, but unfortunately I cannot say anything about that.
So I would also just like to ask you about the public participation and the involvement, because I noticed that in the mining process that you have the EIA and the social impact assessment, and then you have the public consultation period. And I wondered how you can do the social impact assessment without involving local people. Who is taking part in that social impact assessment prior to the open
I'm Lars Jørgen Kleit from Welfare and Labour in Kommunalaftenmark. When you look at the scene here, we can see everybody talks about that when the government, the coalition in 2014, 13-14 came with royalty to the companies. Has that had impact on licenses? We can see here, but it didn't seem like that. That it had some impact of that of decreasing the licenses in Greenland, according to the numbers. So it didn't have any impact of that. Do it? When you look at it.
Yeah, it's a good question because we don't know what would have been, but no, not directly, not to exploration. We don't see a direct link between introducing royalty and the number of exploration licenses. In our view, it's more impacted by the world economy and prices on raw metals and minerals, and not directly linked to royalties.
And one more question is, you said that the small-scale licenses have been increasing the last few years, and what is the strategy for that? Because I could hear that political that somebody was worried about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of interest in this
Yeah,
area,
yeah.
and it's something that we are monitoring very closely to ensure that people get the right licenses and that they follow the rules in the Mineral Resources Act. So it's a very high focus area, and I think it will be as well in the next strategy period.
Okay.
The small-scale licenses, as I just mentioned before, can only be granted to locals in Greenland. You need to have lived here for at least 5 consecutive years, and you need to have some sort of interest or skill within this area. Most of them are doing minor prospecting, and they usually look for gemstones and make jewelry that they sell to tourists and people here in Greenland. So that's sort of the main focus area, but of course some of them are looking into expanding their and actually creating companies, and we're of course helping them along the way to ensure that they follow all the rules in place here in Greenland.
Sorry taking the time again, and it's not every day we have such kinds of seminar where we can ask directly. Preferable, it will be good to have a political person as well. But in several occasions we have heard that the government are intending to establish an independent external advisory board in regards to the extractive industries. Do you know anything about something about that signal when or how it will be conducted?
No, I don't know directly, but I know that it will be a part of the Finance Act. So I think it's going to depend a bit about that. So yeah.
I have one more question, and that's about the impact benefit agreements, which you didn't mention. I think now that the seminar is focusing on public participation and that the impact benefit agreements has got something to do with what's in it for local people and for the rest of the population also. Could you elaborate a little on impact benefit agreements, the procedure and the typical content?
To be honest, not much. It's the Ministry of Industry, Labour and Trade that are mainly responsible for this. We are involved, and so are most other government bodies. Like the Ministry of Education is also part of this. But it's a three-party agreement. You have the local municipality and the company. And it's very much focused on the amount of local workforce, and usually there are also agreements as to further education of the local workforce and how much value they will add to the local societies that are affected of the mine. The IBAs that are already in place should all be found on our government website, nalagassusutki.gl. So you should be able to find most of it there.
Yeah, my name is Natalia Brichet. I'm from the University of Copenhagen. I'm curious about evaluations and evaluating the former mines that has been opened and closed down here. Are you working on some kind of evaluating, for example, Nalunaq or some mines before that?
Not directly, in the sense that we sit down and make a formal schedule about this, but of course we follow up on the things that went well and what didn't go as well as we wanted it to. So of course we follow up a bit, but we do that within our own area. And I'm sure that the other government bodies are also sort of evaluating, but it's not a formal process.
So it's not public? It's not open for
not public.
Okay. Are you considering making this public as well? And I mean, this could maybe be part of a hearing process to see how other has experienced having a mine or not. I mean, to include that work into a hearing process.
It's not something we plan on currently.
Karin Buhmann from Copenhagen Business School. I would be very interested to hear how you work with. I would be very interested to hear how you work with local communities. To understand how you work with local communities to find out what they would like to gain from these projects that are being considered. So what's in it for the local communities? Because I think, as you also indicated, when we have this conversation, there's a lot of focus on the adverse impacts, but obviously there are also huge opportunities in Greenlandic society for companies to contribute in different ways. And we tend to also hear more about the conversation on identifying the adverse impacts. So now, how do you actually work with local communities to get them to bring out the ideas they would like for how they would like companies to contribute that you can also include in the benefit impact agreements?
Again, the impact benefit agreements are not within the responsibility of my ministry, so we are not involved in that process. So I don't know much about it, but to be honest, I would guess that that's also the role of the municipalities. That's why we have municipalities. It's so that they can reach out to the local communities and engage people. They know who to talk to out there. And we have a close dialogue with the municipalities about most of these projects.
Anyone here from that responsible ministry who could tell us about that?